welcome to another podcast of What Else You Got with Mitch and Margot. We're happy to be here with you today. Hey, Mitch, what else you got?
Oh, we're already done? Okay. Wait. Or you're introducing. Okay, that's what we're doing.
What you got, Mitch?
Oh, okay. So here's a fun one for you. What's the difference between motivation and burnout?
My first thought is that they are two opposite ends of a spectrum.
So it's actually, I had the epiphany this week that they're basically the same thing. The only difference is clarity. And I say that because a lot of people, when they have burnout, they have usually some kind of motivation. They have a vision, and they have work, but they don't have the ability to own, or they don't know where they're going. But as soon as you know where you're going and how to get there and what you're allowed to do, you can have, with that clarity, you have the motivation and the freedom to actually accomplish what you're going for.
I don't know if I agree. The topic of burnout and overwhelm has been on my mind.
Technically, the topic I was going for was clarity and motivation, but I figured burnout throws in there because as I was having burnout this week, and then I'm going, I haven't done anything, and then once I started doing clarity, I'm going, oh, I know what I can do, and the burnout disappeared basically immediately.
Okay, my friend Google says burnout is a state of severe emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion caused by prolonged, unmanaged, or excessive stress, particularly in a work-related context. It is characterized by three key dimensions: chronic fatigue, increased cynicism, and reduced professional efficacy.
Yeah, and there's another facet that gets added on where it's the inability to provide ownership or to uh, progress or influence a project that you're responsible for,
Yeah,
but
that's
you're not allowed to make any decisions.
right. That's the reduced professional efficacy.
Yeah.
Um, so your original question was the difference between motivation and burnout.
Hmm.
Um, I think we're talking about apples and pizzas. I don't know that motivation and burnout are I'm still trying to process the question of there's a huge chasm of difference between motivation and burnout. Someone can still have a lot of motivation and be experiencing burnout, but someone who's experiencing burnout may have a frustrated sense of motivation.
Yeah. And so I guess going off of the frustrated sense of motivation, because uh, like I said, the real topic was clarity. Allows you to have drive and direction. And the reason why I brought up burnout is because it's the lack of direction or the lack of influence over direction. And so it's the clarity of the path is what I'm trying to go after.
Okay, so I'm trying to work through this on the spot. You're seeing a lot of my processing facial expressions. Clarity, I think you can have clarity in both states of motivation and burnout. I think you can be experiencing acute clarity while still feeling severe burnout. I think that you can feel acute clarity while feeling motivation. I think that motivation might be the only thing that gets you through a state of burnout. I think burnout can also deplete your motivation.
Yeah. So I don't want to focus too much on the comparison because that was a poor intro. But it really was the how can clarity help work through burnout slash how can it help improve motivation?
I think clarity can really help improve motivation. I think that when it comes to burnout, there's a huge sense of exasperation. I'm going to give you the, if I can remember how to spell exasperation,
There's an H and X and an A and a
exasperation.
P.
So exasperation, no, that's not a very good definition. Um, have a great, uh,
Isn't it hard when you think one word means something, then you actually pull it up and you go, it doesn't quite fit?
well, no, I know what exasperation means. I just thought it was going to be a quick, easy Google ask to give you the my preferred definition of it, because in my head, um, oh, here it is. The feeling of being annoyed, especially because you can do nothing to solve a problem. So that's according to the Cambridge Dictionary. So exasperation is that frustrated sense of, as hard as you strive to solve a problem, there just is nothing that you can do to solve a problem. And I think that that is a huge force behind the sense of burnout, is when you're exasperated, when you have used all of your problem solving skills, used all of your clarity, used all of your motivation, and there is still a looming problem that cannot currently be solved by you. And so I think that's a very frustrating state to be in. I would much rather be in that exciting, motivated position of where things are clear. And I do think clarity is a huge factor behind finding your motivation.
Yeah, because as you were saying that, exasperated was kind of what I've been going through the past couple of weeks of because I started a new endeavor and I've been trying to figure out how to get it to start and work the way as advertised. And so it's just one of those I'm going, okay. So my first set of resources that everyone says, yeah, that's where you start, that's where everything goes, didn't quite work the way I wanted to. And so I was trying to get into the second tier resources and it just wasn't working. And so it's one of those that I was trying to figure out how to farm more of these resources so that I could actually get things to move the way I wanted to. And then I was sitting in a call and I had the epiphany of there's this entire different flavor of resource that you can go after. And after I had that, then I mixed it with some clarity on what I'm trying to actually achieve in this endeavor. And mixing those together, I've just taken off because I'm going, all right, I know one way to fix my problem. I have a better idea on what I'm trying to actually achieve with the problem. And it's one of those that the avenue to solve both of them have improved. And now I'm going full bore. Of course, this will go up until exasperation comes back and I hit some roadblock that I can't figure out. But it really comes down to the clarity helped improve the idea on how to work around the issue I was having.
Well, I think clarity is a huge element of teamwork. If you've got a team of people that you're trying to get toward a common goal, if that goal is not clear or if the path to the goal is not clear, there can be confusion and frustration. And so I think clarity, especially when working with a team, is essential. And if there's confusion, then you need to break it down into smaller steps, be more clear, more concise about those smaller steps to make sure everybody is on the same page. And sometimes the why behind something, the explanation behind something, helps not only offer clarity, but also helps with motivation. If people can understand your why, then oftentimes they'll be able to more easily get on board with you to help achieve the clear goal.
And I like how you said understand the why because a lot of people they know what they're trying to do, they have an idea on how they're going to do it, but they don't understand the why they're trying to do it. And it's really as you can explain the why, get into all the details of the why, it really starts forming the what the end state actually looks like. And as you're able to materialize the end state, you go, oh, I need to get this part so I can add it to the end state and build it out because on top of that, one of the things that on a different training call I was on, they talked about have your 25 reasons why, and you're going, that's a long list, but as you because you can explain to three off the top of your head, But as you start getting into the nitty gritty on all these whys and the deep details, you're going, okay, I'm seeing that. And then you start figuring out how you can get to achieving your whys.
Yes, I love that, and I also love the connection that together we're starting to make, circling back clear to your original question, what's the difference, or how, I don't remember how you phrased it, but what's the relationship between motivation and burnout? And then you brought in the word clarity, and then now talking about teams and brainstorming. So, and offering the why, I think this is where it becomes all interlaced, because if you can bring a team together to discuss the end goal and have clarity to foster that motivation, then as team members become more clear on what the smaller goals are and the whys, then I think that that process right there can help reduce burnout, because if everybody on the team is offered a chance to foster clarity and improve clarity and ask for clarity, then it gives them that more of that sense of ownership over their own role. And then the team can work together to spread out the workload so one person alone isn't suffering extreme burnout that can lead to that exasperation. So I do think that we can circle back and say that these three things are significantly related: motivation, clarity, and burnout. And if we work together as a team, then we can really find a solution to any problem that is thwarting our goals. And you had asked about that, or you had mentioned coming up with a list of 25 whys. One of the techniques I've used across multiple careers is don't just stop at the quick answer. And I think that that's why you were asked to come up with 25, because, yeah, the first three items to answer any question, those are usually easier to come up with. But when you get further down the list, so like items 7 through 12, then that's where things start getting interesting. And then when you get beyond that number, then creativity really has to come into play in order for you to flesh out that list. And sometimes when you really have to force your creativity or tap into your creativity, then those are some diamonds down there that you've just excavated because you put in the extra time and effort to go beyond the easy answer.
Yeah, and it really is because you talked about the team level. Because I was really just talking about the individual level. Because with the individual, as you understand why you do things, it's phenomenal. Because like you and I, we go to therapy and we realize oh, I do this because of that. That makes sense, which then leads into other things. And then you look at the motivation side of why you're trying to achieve it. And surprisingly, it goes all the way back to what happened decades ago. But on the team angle, I've worked on teams that you ask why and they go, don't worry about it. I just need XYZ. And you're going, well, I can give you XYZ, but if you want it with a flavor of ABC or LMNO, it's one of those that I'm pulling letters out of the air. It depends on which one you want. It's a completely different implementation. And so when leadership thinks they're doing you a favor of removing the whys, sometimes it's adding barricades, and it's the frustration of, okay, I don't know what one you want, so I have to build both. And by building both and make it interchangeable, it's a worse product. But as you explain the reasoning for trying to achieve something, and not only explain it so you say it, but you need to explain it in such a way that they understand it and they share the vision.
Sharing the vision is key here. And I know you come from a different background than I do. You come from I almost said ET. That's an alien. You come from IT. I come from more of business and sales and some creative avenues also. But I just believe knowing the why and conveying the why to your team members and, people who help support the workflow is essential, because number one, when you just gave your example and you said basically the leadership said you don't need to know the why, you just need to do the work. Well, first of all, that's so dismissive why would anybody want to remain on a team and do work for that person when they just immediately dismissed your need to know the why? I think that one of the greatest ways to build a strong team and encourage and motivate others is to share your vision of the why. And if you can get people excited about the why, they're going to do the work more effectively and more efficiently because they share your vision.
Yeah, and granted, there's sometimes that they can't share the why for a list of reasons,
Give me
but
a
there's a
reason. Give me a reason why you can't share the why.
classified, legal restriction, and a bunch of other stuff. But you can share the emotion and the underlying uh, objective, not so much the why on it, but you can share enough of the vision where they see loosely where they're headed and enough of it. Um, but it's one of those that why do I need to build a computer that can survive the desert? Well, the military takes computers into the desert, but it's one of those that implementation you might not be able to do, but you can spin it another way of, well, wouldn't you like to have a computer they can throw in the water and it works just fine? Then people go, okay, I can get behind that. And it's a different why, but it feeds the main why.
Well, and I'm trying to think of reasons why you would not be able to share the why. The only one, I heard what you said, but I want to push back on all of those things. For example, I work in the mental health industry, and so I can see why a clinician, a provider, might not be able to explain the why behind a request of an admin person because HIPAA, right? Ethics and HIPAA and rules that need to keep information confidential. However, the clinician or the provider could still say to the admin person that the answer to the why question is because it's in the client's best interests and we want to help this client overcome some problems. So please take these following steps to help us to get there. So that way you're explaining the why and still keeping the information confidential. You mentioned like security clearance. Yeah, you might in an industry that works with military or government, you might have leadership who has higher security clearance and can't divulge specifics, but they can still give enough of the why to motivate and allow their team to feel inclusive without breaking any confidentiality rules.
Yeah, and that's where sharing bits and pieces. And as you're talking about clinician, one of the thoughts I had was sometimes you don't know the why enough to explain the why, because in the realm of HIPAA, I can't tell you this. I know HIPAA says that. I don't understand it well enough to convey it, but I know HIPAA means we do this. And so there's a couple different ways you can approach it of if I can't explain the why, then I need to figure out how to or define the why better for myself so I can tell you enough of the why. Because, like you said, where it's in the client's best interest, well, I'm sure probably half the clinicians go, I can't tell you because it's a client thing. But like you said, you also learn how to generic it enough where you say it's a client's interest. And like military, you might not have the idea, but going back to the laptop in the desert, we need a computer that can survive adverse conditions so it doesn't break. And people go, oh, okay, that makes sense. You're not explaining it's the nuclear football that goes out into the desert and it's going to get trumped.
Well, and I think that it's way better to give a generic answer like you've talked about and I've talked about than to just dismiss the person and say you don't need to know. Because nobody likes to be dismissed. Nobody likes to be treated that way. So find a way to give a piece of generalized information that doesn't violate any confidentiality rules to include your team members.
Yeah. And because my first thought, as you said, to dismiss is if you get dismissed, then you get frustrated. When you get frustrated, you lose motivation. When you lose enough motivation, you face burnout. And when you face burnout, your effectiveness goes down. And so you have all these problems compounded. And at least for me, one way I think of frustrate or not frustrate of burnout for me is two cogs that are trying to work together, but they're grinding against each other. And you have both motors getting super hot because they're trying to work, but they're just stuck and they can't seem to clear it. But if you figure out why the gears are just grinding, then you can get them to work together where they actually do what you want them to. And that's the way I always envision the physicalness of burnout is because a lot of people have been able to use something with a motor in it and the motor gets stuck, but the motor's trying really hard to spin and it's just getting hotter and hotter and hotter to the point where it breaks itself. And it's just one of those that if you can figure out what's blocking it, then you're not just grinding gears. You're then able to unleash all that potential to actually do what you want it to do in the way it's intended, but you just got to figure out why it's stuck. One
Which
example.
comes back to clarity. If you can have clarity on the system, then you can unleash the potential of the system. What were you going to say?
Yeah, one example, I was working on a project and it's rug making because I finally got around to doing it. Um, and somehow I got a yarn wrapped around one of the gears because it was exposed, and I could hear the motor trying. And I looked down and I saw that the gear got wound up, and as soon as I got it clear, I was able to do exactly what it needed to, and it's no longer fighting itself because the yarn was on one side of the motor, the other yarn was on the other side, and it was literally pulling against itself and it couldn't move. And so, as you figure out how to remove those obstacles, you reduce burnout, you reduce the reduction of motivation, aka you increase motivation, you increase the clarity, and as you get all those moving in the same direction, you get the momentum and effectiveness you want.
I liked your example of working against itself. I think that that's a major contributing factor in our own burnout is when we are working against ourselves, making the problem more complex or compounding the problem. If we can step back, get that clarity, take a look at the system to make sure all the cogs and wheels are working together the way they're supposed to, including our part in the process, that clarity can free up some of the function of the system so that we can then tap into that potential and harness the motivation. I think a very confusing question at the beginning of this podcast has led into a great brainstorming and clarifying discussion.
Yeah, and going off of where you're talking about things working against each other, with my example of XYZ, you have ABC and elemental P. If you have to build both A, B, C, and elemental P, but they're mutually exclusive, how do you make those work together? You have to figure out how to get them to work together, but they, like I said, they're mutually exclusive. So it's really hard to mix oil and water, but someone said you have to, and you're going, I don't understand. But when you break it down, there are some oils that are compatible with water in a different definition. And so it's really just one of those that if you understand the why, you can make whatever is being asked work because you understand what is actually trying to be achieved.
Yeah. And where they might be mutually exclusive, if you add another piece to the system, like a whisk or a shaker, then those two can go together, even if only for a limited time. You just need to take a look at your system and figure out what additional piece needs to be added to your system in order to allow those other pieces to function together.
Yeah, kind of sounds like our podcast that we put out a couple days ago of building the right team, getting the right tools. It really just comes down to if you can spend a lot of time trying to solve mutually exclusive, or you find the missing piece, which just makes everything run smoother. And many of the times you don't know what that missing piece is, but if you take the time to build your clarity and your vision, you're able to figure out what looks like it's missing, and can then go, all right, there's something missing here. Let's see what we can do about it.
Well, and sometimes that missing piece is item number 24, 25 on that list of 25 things that you thought it was silly, not you specifically, but somebody might think it's silly to make a list of 25 reasons to answer a question when you think the simple answer is among the first three options. Forcing yourself to go beneath the surface, to dig deeper, look further. Sometimes the most creative solutions are at the bottom of that list. And that number 24, the 24th item could be that missing piece for the system, the machinery, to allow the other pieces to work together.
Yeah. And as you were saying that, one thought popped in my head of reason number 2, make money. Reason 24 is to help others. And it's one of those that you go, okay, the money feeds into helping others. But if you look at just helping others, you don't need money. You can go out and start doing that part, and then the money will somehow show up, and you're able to then uh, expand what you're doing with number 24. And it's just one of those that I actually had a project that I was working on, and the constraint I had in my head was build it all, get it right. When in reality, I need to build enough to see if I need to tweak the design. And so just by doing that, I took out myself as an obstacle and gave myself permission to move forward.
Ah, I like that. Sometimes we are the obstacle and we can't see clearly. We have no clarity because we are in our own way. Sometimes we need to step out of our own way, distance ourselves from the situation, the problem, the burnout, and take a look from a distance so we can see more of the whole picture.
Yeah, and also add in there, we keep hinting towards the vision, and it's one of those that if you think about you being a millionaire, well, you're
I like
thinking
that idea.
you're sitting on a pile of $100 bills,
Mm, I like
but
that
the
idea.
question comes down to, where are you? Are you sitting in jail? Are you sitting on the beach? Are you sitting on an airplane? You haven't defined the how you got the $1 million. You're just saying, yeah, I'm going to have $1 million. But as you're able to then expand and fill in the background, because one funny thing, I was watching some old anime the other day, and the background is just very flat. There's just the absolute minimum to it because this is when they were hand drawing, so they did all they need to just for the characters to sit in front of something. But then I saw a remake of basically that exact same episode. The entire background is all spelled out with all this color, with all this detailing. You're enjoying the background with the characters versus you just have the characters somewhere. And so it really comes down to, where are you in your vision? Because yes, you can have your vision of having a working company. Well, you can have a working company that's super small, or you can have a company that is the size of a planet, but it really comes down to what goes on. Because yes, you can have the size of a planet, but what does Block 32B look like? Well, that's a good question. And as you build out that vision, you go, okay, I need to figure out how to get Block 32B working.
I love that. I love it. This has been a very clarifying experience for me today, and I'm leaving this conversation feeling like I have motivation to overcome burnout because of the clarity that has been provided in this episode of this fantastic podcast. You're amazing. My mind is just today. Great ideas. What else you got,
And
Mitch?
yeah, basically what you're experiencing is what I had my epiphany all week, and I've been trying to materialize it all week. But yeah, so I think that's it for this one. Like, comment, subscribe. Yes, it was a rough start, but that's sometimes how your best clarifying moments occur. Again, this is What Else You Got with Mitch and Margot, and we'll see you on the next one.